There we go. Recording is on. And then I'm going to go to Facebook Live. Okay, so sometimes this takes a minute to continue on because Facebook is thinking.
Okay.
All right, so it's going live, I think. Okay. Okay, preparing to live stream. All right, so it looks like we're live. So meeting is now streaming live. So um, hi there, I'm Katie Stevenson with Norcom Mortgage out of Avon, Connecticut, and I am here chatting today with Ellie Pascon, our in-house appraisal management from our in-house appraisal management company. So take it away for a second, Ellie, and tell us about yourself.
Sure. Hey, Katie. Hello, everyone. My name is Ellie Pascon. I'm a Connecticut certified residential appraiser. I've been doing it for about 20 years. I've also have earned my SRA designation through the Appraisal Institute, which just means that I have even gone above and beyond state certification.
Okay.
I was hired in 2012 to come to Norcom and manage the appraisal process. So I oversee everything from managing our appraiser panels, the placement, ordering of the appraisals from start to finish. So
Okay.
from when LO is ready to order the appraisal for a loan, from order placement to finally when the report is delivered.
Gotcha. And all of the steps in between and all of that.
Everything in between. Yeah, all the phone calls and making sure that the appointment is booked and communicating any issues. Can't reach the borrower or can't reach the listing agent. There's an array of things that can come up.
Gotcha. All right, so we'll, I guess we'll hop right in with our, the first question that I have for you. What is an appraisal?
So an appraisal, simply stated, is a valuation of property, right? So
Okay.
it could be, personal property. You could have a diamond ring appraised.
Okay.
You could have a collectible that you want to appraise.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, in our industry, we're talking about real estate, right?
Okay.
So for our purposes and for the lending world, an appraisal is an objective and unbiased professional opinion of the home's value, right?
Okay.
So you want to get Connecticut is still a mandatory state where the appraisal has to be done by a certified appraiser.
Okay.
So therefore, and the reason why these are in place is that certified appraisers abide by USPAP, which is a set of standards that they have to adhere to, which helps promote public trust. So it's not it's not a flyby, somebody who's just decided to go do appraisals tomorrow, you know what I mean, and say, hey, your home is worth X. There is a process. Obviously, there's a lot of schooling you have to go through. There, you have to do an apprenticeship under somebody, and then you go for your certification through the state of Connecticut.
Gotcha. Okay, so you sort of touched a little bit on why an appraisal is necessary. So in the state of Connecticut, when somebody is applying for a mortgage, the state of Connecticut requires that an appraisal is done on a house. to help us come up with what the value, the fair market value of the house is. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, 100%. And
Gotcha.
first and foremost, it also serves to protect the buyer, right?
Sure.
So the borrower wants to make sure that they're not overpaying for a house, right?
Sure.
So the appraiser, will perform the appraisal to come up with a fair market value, which may not always be equal to the listing price, right?
Sure.
And so when you take into consideration that sometimes you're dealing with for sale by owners, as the more commonly known as FSBOs,
Yeah.
you may have somebody who, put their house up for sale. It's a private sale, and they just threw a figure at it because that's what they want to get for their house.
Sure.
But the listing price may not necessarily be market value. Market value is defined as the most probable price that
Gotcha.
somebody, a property should, get from the open by being exposed to the open market, right?
Sure.
So that protects the buyers. So the buyer, it's nice to know that they're not overpaying for something. On the lending side, right? So before a lender like Norcom Mortgage can lend anybody any amount of money, they have to establish the value of what we call the collateral, right? And the collateral is just simply a security that you put that you put in place for the repayment of the loan. So should something go awry, something goes wrong, the borrower can't make any more payments, defaults on the loan, the lender will hold the home as collateral, will take possession. And so therefore, just as equally as important it is for the borrower, right, to establish a fair market value so they're not overpaying for the home.
Sure.
Evaluation is equally as important for the lender because, as a lender, you don't want to lend, let's say, $100,000 on something that's only worth $8,000, right?
Right.
And so that's why it's so important. That's why, getting an appraisal is so important before a loan can be given out. So.
Gotcha. And then as you were kind of chatting about that, it kind of reminds me of when somebody is going to buy a car. Consumers are so educated right now and do so much research and look at, blue book value and what is a car worth, so that if I want to buy, let's say I drive a Subaru, so I'll use that as an example. If I want to go to a Subaru dealer, and this is not an advertisement for Subaru, but if I want to go buy a car, I'll walk onto the lot, and I'll look at what's available, and I'll look at, okay, this is how much you're asking me to pay for this car. So I'm going to do a little bit of research and make sure that the car is worth it before I either plop down a bunch of cash to pay for the car, or I take a loan. So I want to make sure it's kind of like that. You had talked about appraisals can be done for collectibles and jewelry. So we get a lot of questions about, oh, why, it's so expensive, I don't want to pay for that. Do I have to? Well, you do if you want a loan, first of all. So what about if somebody has cash, if somebody makes an offer on a house and says, I'll pay cash, I have the money in the bank, I'll go get you a bank check to pay for this house, is an appraisal available to somebody paying cash?
Yeah, absolutely. By far, it's the best money you're going to spend, right? Think about what you're about to do. It's probably the biggest investment you're going to make in your lifetime, is the purchase of the home. So relative to the cost of the home and the purchase price and what you're about to do, it's about $495, $500 for an appraisal. That is money well spent, right? To get a certified appraiser, who has to abide by certain standards, right? To come up with the property's market value, right? Okay. So even if you were paying cash, right? I would seek out an appraiser just to educate yourself, because, you know, you may not know, you know, you said people do a lot of research when it comes to cars and all that. And people are watching, you know, the internet. That big data is out there, right? There's a lot of online information. You have your Zillows, you have your Trulia, and even like if you're using those sources, even amongst those, you're going to probably get, you know, 30, 40, 50, hundreds, you know, $100,000 in difference in values, right? So which one's right? Is it Trulia? Is it Zillow? Is it
Realtor.com?
Yeah, you know, Realtor.com. So you don't know, right? And so to me, it's the best money spent just for peace of mind to see, you know, what is out there. The appraiser will do the analysis and come up with 3 or 4 best comparables that, you know, to come up with the market value for your home.
Sure. Because I think you're absolutely right. Is there are so many different online resources about generating a value of a home, and every one of them seems to be a little bit different. And while Zillow has gotten a little bit better ish recently about coming up with the value of a home, and it's a little bit more accurate, it's still not an appraisal.
And the one thing, just to interrupt you for 1 second there, don't forget, there's no replacement for a set of eyes, right? There's no replacement for a physical inspection by an appraiser, going to the property, right? And when you're dealing with Zillows and Trulias and Realtor.com, that's just data, you know, of prior sales going in, and they're using models to come up with a number, right?
Sure.
That is not the same as an appraiser going out there and looking at the fact. I always remember one class that I took, and the professor always showed us this beautiful picture of a house from the front, right? And then when you walked around back, it was completely burned down, right? So he's like, you know, if you know, obviously, you know, from the front, things can be deceiving. So when you get an appraiser that walks through and sees the you know, particulars about the house, that is much better than just a computer generated model.
Sure, just definitely much better than a street view. So like I see every once in a while I'll see one of those Google Earth cars driving around. It's got the big cameras on top, and it takes street view pictures of a house, and you cannot come up with the value of a house based on, you know, somebody standing in the middle of the street looking at your house. You cannot come up with an accurate value. So you touched a moment ago, you touched on with websites like Zillow and Trulia that it's you know, it sounds like it's the information that they put out there and plug into their sort of algorithm to create their value is public data. So a sale is a sale is a sale. So if it does not take into consideration that a sale might be in a state or a foreclosure, so they just want to get rid of the house, so they sell it for less, or the fact that I live in a condo and in a condo complex here in Avon that are lower values than the neighborhood that's a quarter mile away from where I live. So, you know, all within the same zip code, within a very short distance from where I live, there's, you know, $750,000 to $1 million homes. There's $250,000 to $500,000 homes, and then there's a condo complex that I live in that might have $100,000 to $150,000 condos. So all within a short distance, and if everything gets kind of tossed in together, shaken up, and you come up with an average, that's not a fair reflection of what.
So I think the best way to sum it up is that you know, automated valuation models, AVMs. CMAs, that's all just data put together, and then they'll spit out a number. An appraisal, an actual analysis of that data
by a human being,
by a certified appraiser. So that the same data that was, you know, fed into the computers that generate those models and come up with that number is the data that the appraiser is going to be looking at. Right, so the appraiser is going to be looking at the sales, this and that, and then he's going to analyze it, and that's the key component. It's the human factor, right?
Yeah.
That's what we as appraisers get trained for. And, you know, so when you do that analysis and you start considering some of the, for example, yes, there was a property that sold way up high, you know, there was a reason why it sold for millions with some of the other, you know, so that's where the appraiser would come in and do his or her analysis of it.
Sure, gotcha. So how does an appraiser come up with a value? We've been talking for a minute about the you know the human component and the aspect of having a certified appraiser analyzing the data that's public record and whatnot. So what are some of the things that an appraiser looks at when determining the value of a home?
So every appraisal starts with the inspection of the home, right? And by inspection, I don't mean a home inspection, right? So the appraiser's not going in there poking beams to see if there's termite damage. I mean, the appraiser's not testing the efficiency of the heating system or cooling system. The appraiser's inspection is a walk through the house to inspect what is visually and readily available, right? Not opening holes in the walls and to see how much insulation there. So he does an inspections to get an idea of quality of the finishes, condition of the property.
Gotcha.
The appraiser will measure the property, you know, will measure the outside dimensions, photograph the rooms, you know, typically your main living areas, your kitchens, your bathrooms, any special features, along with the special features, anything that's been renovated, you know, recently, and conversely, any deferred maintenance. It's some things that may have been let go, right? Sometimes appraisers even shoot a little video, you know, because it is important to have that in their work file, because should something happen down the road where they have to, you know, they're brought into court to testify, they want to have as much information about the property as possible, right? So they'll do a sketch of the property, they'll photograph the exterior, you know, front, sides, back, swimming pools, any extra things that you have on the property. Once the appraiser gathers all the information that he or she needs, right? They're gonna verify this information with public data. So whatever the, you know, assessor's department or town clerk's office has on file, and then they're gonna compile their report, right? While they're compiling the report, you know, they've done the inspection. They may or may not already have taken some comp photos, right? Because every appraiser, prior to going out, they'll run some sales data to see what's available. And then after inspecting the home, they'll look at the sales data that they gathered and say, okay, this one's most comparable, this one's most, you know, second most comparable, and they'll grab their photos. So when they're compiling the report, they're taking things into consideration, you know, the neighborhood, the neighborhood characters, like the actual location of the home, you know, is it waterfront? Does it have, you know, water views? Does it have golf course views? Is it located on a ridge where it's got beautiful mountain views? Proximity to schools, proximity to shopping centers, highways. All this gets taken into consideration, right? And then the appraiser will look at sales data and try to pick the three most comparable properties that have sold recently. Okay. The most common and the most used approach to value is the sales comparison approach. Okay. And that's what I just described to you. The appraiser will look at sales and then we'll start to match up all the amenities that the subject had. So if the subject had a pool, we'll try to find homes that have pools, right? Since pools aren't that common up here in the Northeast, let's stick to something basic. Say the subject has had recent renovations and they've done, they had a brand new kitchen, brand new bathrooms, roof, siding, windows. The appraiser is now going to look for comparables that have sold, preferably in the neighborhood, but if not within the immediate neighborhood, so let's say it's, you know, very low density and there aren't that many sales, then the next step would be to go to a competing neighborhood within the same town. And then even if there are no sales there either, then, the adjacent towns, as long as the towns are similar, demographics and et cetera, right?
Mhm.
And so once he or she comes up with their, minimum 3 sales, but they can use as many as they want to compile a credible report. So we normally see anywhere from 3 to 5 comparable sales and 1 or 2 listings. They'll put that on a report and what's called the sales comparison grid and start to make their adjustments. And the adjustments are simply the differences, right? And so if a home is a little bit bigger, they're going to adjust it downward. Okay, there's a negative adjustment. I won't bore you with the details, but the adjustments are made so that if you don't have an exact carbon copy of the subject dwelling, you're adjusting for the differences.
Okay.
And so then you come up with a, there's obviously a lot more that goes into it, but then you come up with your adjusted values. And from there, you reconcile those values to come up what you believe as the appraiser is the most probable price that property will sell for. It may equal the sales price, the listing price. Most of the time, it doesn't. There's always, there's room for negotiation when a property is listed at, X, and they know they're going to negotiate. So it may equal sales price, but it doesn't necessarily have to. Okay, and then you have your valuation. 2 other approaches are less common. I won't get into full details, but you have the income approach to value and you have the cost approach to value. The income approach is just going to be based on, rental income if it's an investment property. And the cost approach would be, what is the value of the whole of this property if I had to replace it, with something.
Okay, so if something like a natural disaster, there's a fire or something like that, and the home needs to be rebuilt from the ground up, that would be that approach that you're talking about now, that cost approach?
Correct.
Gotcha.
And the cost approach, the reason why it's not as reliable as the sales comparison approach is because of, in the cost approach, a big portion of it is determining the home's actual depreciation. And so with older homes, it is difficult to come up with an accurate, depreciated value. Okay. So the cost approach is usually most applicable to newer homes, brand new construction, or maybe 5 years old. And then the income approach is just rarely used on, single families because there's not a ton of rental data, for a single family. And so 9.9 times, you're going to get a report that the opinion of market value is going to be based on what other homes similar to yours have sold for. Similar to the subject. And that is the best way to approach it. And so, and then come up with the value.
Okay, so I guess, my final question is, what happens if somebody disagrees with the value? So if an appraisal, whether somebody's buying a home, refinancing a home, let's say in the sales, when somebody's buying a house from somebody else, there's the asking price that the seller puts out there. So I go in and I make an offer on a house and I say, okay, I'll pay your $175,000 for this house. I have an appraisal done. Obviously, if the appraisal comes in higher, I'm not going to complain. That I'll say, okay, that's great, and leave it alone. If the appraisal comes in lower, and let's say the appraisal comes in at, I don't know, 165 instead of 175, my options are I can bring $10,000 more money with me to closing to pay that difference, because a bank is not going to lend on more than the value of the house.
Yeah, the appraised value.
I can bring the appraised value. So I can bring the $10,000 with me. I can ask the seller to reduce the sales price. if neither of those things work, what are my options in terms of either arguing with an appraisal or disputing that and say, hey, I don't agree with this. I don't think that this is correct. What are my
Absolutely. Yeah, and so hence, this goes back to why it's nice to have the appraisal process in-house, right?
Sure.
So your borrower is going to go back to you and say, Katie, I don't, let's say you're doing a refi, because the disputes most often come from the refis, because a borrower may have an idea of what their property is worth. And like myself, my home is my castle. I'm very proud of it. So I think it's worth, $10 million, right?
Yeah.
And so the first thing is that, again, key to having the appraisal process in-house is that the borrower will come to you and you'll say, listen, I got an answer for that. We have a certified, seasoned, 20-year veteran of the profession in-house that's going to look at this. And, I don't forget that by definition, market value is an opinion of value.
Sure.
Okay. By definition, appraisal is an opinion of value. So there's bound to be differences, right? So at that point, right, your borrower will go to you and say, hey, 123 Main Street, right, 4 houses down from mine sold for X, right? And so as a lender, we do make available the reconsideration of value process for any borrower, right? That's where the borrower, working with you as the loan officer, has the opportunity to review the appraisal, and then very key to a successful reconsideration of value is discussing why you don't believe the 3, 4, 5 comparables already in the report are true. Is a true representation of or two similar homes to your dwelling. Okay. So explain, make your notes of why you believe that. And then if you have additional sales, like I said, 123 Main Street just sold, 5 houses down for X amount, provide those sales to us.
Gotcha.
We'll analyze them, right? And as long as it's reasonable, right? So let's just say your borrower had a 2,000 square foot home and they come back and they say to you, Katie, can you provide this sale of 123 Main Street for review? As long as it's it's not a 4,000 square foot home, you know what I mean? I will do it now. I will look at it, and as long as it's reasonable, I will start the conversation with the appraiser and say, hey, here's the points that the borrower and the lender, in this case you, Katie, have brought up, and they also have provided these additional sales. Were these considered during your analysis? And see how the appraiser replies. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Sometimes, hey, listen, it's we're all humans, right? Sometimes appraisers make a mistake. They might have missed the sale. Maybe they didn't see that 123 Main Street. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Maybe they overlooked it. For whatever the reason may be, we'll once the appraiser reports back, it'll be a revised appraisal. The value may or may not change, but there better be a full explanation as to why, right?
Gotcha.
And then having this process in-house, along with the discussions that I will have with the underwriters, will come up with a decision. Is it, is the argument supported or not? And then move on. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's great. That makes sense. So there's opportunity for discussion if something, if I as a home buyer or in terms of somebody buying a house or the homeowner in the case of a refinance, if somebody doesn't agree, it's nice to know that there's an option to say, hey, I disagree with this. Here's why. And here's what I think is more comparable. So, hey, I renovated my kitchen and I have, Viking appliances in A, B, and C. And, maybe did you take this into consideration? And like you said, the house 2 doors down just sold yesterday, or, this was not included. Take a look at that. So it's nice to know that there is the opportunity for discussion. If I don't agree with, and it's not up to me as a loan officer. When I say I'm talking about the home buyer or the homeowner. It's not up to me to, as a loan officer, to dispute that. But it is nice to know that a dispute process exists if somebody
Yes.
does not agree with the value. So
And
is there?
equally as important for, working with a lender that's been around for a very long time, making
Sure,
sound lending decisions, right?
sure, absolutely.
While, during the crash, 2006 through 8,
Mhm,
a lot of mortgage companies and a lot of lenders folded shop, right?
sure.
Norcom was growing, we
Yeah,
continue to grow. So, yes, to your point, very key to have that opportunity, but we pride ourselves in being an awesome lender, making
yeah,
key
yeah.
lending decisions.
Yes,
And, at the same time, because you have the borrower's best interest, you know what I mean?
absolutely,
You're
absolutely.
protecting the borrower. Okay, they may have had their heart set on that property, but it's way overpriced. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that, you know what I mean? You take that personal, you want to get that property out of it. You take it out of the equation, and you
Mhm,
look at it objectively. And because listen, the appraiser doesn't have any skin in the game. You know what I mean? He
sure.
gets paid whether or not the loan closes, right?
Right,
So
right.
his job is to provide a credible, objective, unbiased report, and that's what we look at.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's great. That definitely makes sense. Is there anything else that you can think of before we kind of wrap it up? Is there anything else that you can think of that somebody should know about an appraisal or the process, or anything else that you think is important that we did not talk about?
Listen, I think your questions were excellent. I think they touched upon all the key aspects of the whole appraisal and lending process.
Sure.
Um, I my ending comments is work with somebody like you, Katie, who
Thank you.
is going to be able to provide that excellent service, and know that you have a huge team behind you. Some of the best underwriters, our
Absolutely.
staff
Absolutely.
here, Value Quest. We're here to serve, provide the best service possible, and get this done for you.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you had mentioned that you've been doing this for a long time, and um, I um, I recently worked with someone that was born right around the time that I came into the mortgage industry. And I thought to myself, yikes, I've been doing this for a long time. So,
Right?
so it's nice to
We
have that experience to kind of look back on. So,
we've
um,
we've seen it all, right? We've
me
seen the
too.
ups and downs.
Oh my gosh,
So,
absolutely.
and that speaks volumes to a borrower coming in that's brand new to this thing, and they really
Absolutely.
don't understand what's going on. We've seen the ups and downs, the good, the bad, the ugly, and so
Everything in
yeah,
between.
we're here to help them. We're
Yeah.
here to help them make a purchasing decision and making sure that the wool's not pulled over their eyes. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I will put out my ask if anybody has any questions or concerns about the home buying process or refinancing or questions about appraisals. Feel free to call me 860-490-4549. So we will wrap it up here. Ellie, I thank you so much for your time, and appreciate your insight. This has been fantastic information. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Anytime, you're very welcome.
All
Thank you.
right. Thank you. All right. So, well, okay. So the live stream is